Um, Hello to everyone. I'm Dr. Extermann, and I've been asked to present on a clinical perspective on early phase studies for older adults. Here are my disclosures. As most of you know, by 2040, the majority of cancer patients will be above the age of 65. And this is a major epidemiological trend which we need to address in cancer studies, as older patients are underrepresented in clinical trials. Furthermore, patients in their 70s or above have multiple comorbidities. In fact, more than 90% have at least one comorbidity, and on average, 3 of them. Another way of presenting this data is to show that 40% of older Americans have chronic kidney disease, and many drugs are metabolized by the kidney. In addition, these patients in oncologic clinics are in 2/3 of cases having some dependence in their instrumental activities of daily living, so some functional limitation. This means that if we want to design studies that are relevant to the majority of cancer patients, we need to move away from the standard scheme of ECOG performance status 0 or 1 and no major comorbidity, because this is not what the majority of our patients has. So how can we design early phase studies that are relevant for older patients? And here are my clinician thoughts. First, without changing much to the standard phase 1, 2, 3 design, there are enhancements that we can make. No matter what type of design, we should collect more patient data to enhance their external validity. We should collect comorbidity with well-validated tool, example, the cumulative illness rating scale geriatric. Comorbidity has as much impact on prognosis than ECOG performance status, and nobody would dream of designing a trial without ECOG performance status. So let's be coherent and include comorbidity. For older patients, ECOG performance status is not ideal. Therefore, I would strongly recommend that we include some measure of instrumental activities of daily living or basic activities of daily living. We could also include a performance test, a timed up and go, or a 4-meter walk, which are rapid tests and give us objective physical data. I think we should also collect longitudinal functional data beyond ECOG-PS. ECOG-PS is poorly sensitive to change. IADL has been demonstrated to be the most sensitive functional measure. We should also have patient-related outcome measures that are relevant to older patients, and a key measure here would be maintenance of independence, which is an extremely important thing for older patients. Purely for study design, all this information that we collect in early cases will be very useful to have a successful phase 3 study design, which will accrue the patient we intend to accrue. If we want to elaborate into more complex study design, we could, for example, design studies along a progressively increasing inclusion criteria concept. The idea is a bit similar to a phase 1 study. We start with standard inclusion criterion patients. We give them their chemotherapy or their targeted therapy, and if they tolerate it well, we include a second cohort of patients with a higher level of comorbidity or dependence. If they do well, we keep the same level for the next cohort. If there are limitations, we go with lower dose level, and so on. Another option would be simply to have a stratified design, have same treatment given to cohort, well qualified in level of comorbidities, and follow them in parallel, and do an interim safety analysis, maybe at some points, and at the end have a stratified effectiveness analysis, since we know that these comorbidities will affect prognostic. A third possible design would be to do a basket-style trial. And for example, for healthy patients, to have a paclitaxel plus trastuzumab plus a new drug. For the vulnerable, we could have metronomic cyclophosphamide and trastuzumab plus a new drug, building on the EURTC study results. Or for a frail patient, simply a non-chemotherapy regimen that could be done that way. And have separate cohorts progressing in parallel. We could also decide to have a NIH-led or a group-led umbrella design. And on one specific cancer, have permanent cohorts of patients with chronic kidney disease, patients with diabetes, patients with CHF. And we test 3 different drugs in these cohorts. And when one cohort finishes a study with a drug, we go to the next drug for that cohort of patients and continue to have these early phase designs. Another aspect is to design the study for patient friendliness. Transportation for older patients is a big barrier. And many patients come from more than an hour away, need to have their family with them, and therefore considering offering help with transportation would definitely help recruit for clinical trials. We can ask ourselves, can some assessments be done remotely? Do we need to have them all done in person? Can local labs be used for simple tests? Weekly CBCs. There might be mild differences between laboratories, but the essentials are the same across the board, and we should be able to use that in studies. Try to group the assessments in a minimum of session. Try to do online questionnaires that patient can fill from home. Also, think of helping people who have poor hearing or vision. Impaired hearing is frequent in older patients, and material written in small characters may be an issue. Also, many studies want tissue, but tissue means the patient has to have that collected. It may mean an extra sedation, it may mean extra radiological contrast and things like that. Can we do the test on blood rather than on tissue? And finally, rapidly developing area is to leverage wearables. In an increasing number of diabetic patients have permanent glucometers. Many people have a cell phone, and we could use that for distance walking and level of physical activity and quality of sleep, various aspects that we could integrate in our early phase trials. What I hope as a clinician with all these improvements for our older patients is to be able to tell this to my patients. And if I can tell that to the majority of my patients, I would be a very happy oncologist. Thank you for your attention.